Let's get some analysis on this now. We can bring in Natia Seskuria, who's an associate fellow at the Royal United Services Institute, a defence and security think tank. Great to have you on the programme, Natia. Thanks so much for joining us. So the Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, said today that Zelensky's words, him saying that he's ready to sit at the negotiating table, can't be taken as anything but empty words. Can we take this as an unwillingness from Russia to join peace talks?
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me. Yes, indeed, we see that there is definitely a change in rhetoric when it comes to Zelensky's standing with regards to peace negotiations. However, we can say the same about the Russian viewpoint. As you mentioned, Dmitry Peskov has been very much skeptical about the prospect of these peace talks involving Zelensky, claiming that he is not legitimate, something that Putin has reiterated many times before. And I suppose, given these statements, treating Zelensky as an illegitimate president of Ukraine, this does not really demonstrate and show the willingness exactly from the Russian side to negotiate. I think what Russians really prefer right now is to sit down at the negotiation table and deal with President Trump directly without involving Ukraine and deciding the fate of Ukraine without President Zelensky and the Ukrainian side having much say in this.
And Zelensky, in that interview yesterday, said that he considers Putin an enemy. He also said that he believes the Russian president probably considers him as well as an enemy. Him then saying that he's still willing to sit at the negotiating table, which will be him sitting opposite Putin, that really shows that he's very, very keen to have peace, isn't it?
Absolutely. He mentioned that him speaking to Putin directly is a concession itself. And he's right. I mean, he should be treating Putin as enemy. And it's unlikely that Putin will treat him otherwise as well. But Zelensky is being very realistic at the same time, I guess, because he sees, he mentioned actually during this interview that the support that is provided by Ukraine's partners is insufficient for Ukraine to push back and to possibly regain territories that Russians are currently occupying. There is also a mood swing in Ukraine as well, and we see that more people are actually supporting ceasefire. This once again demonstrates, I guess, to Zelensky that it is time to maybe, as he mentioned, end the hot stage of the war. And at the same time, he knows that the geopolitical situation is not giving Ukraine much momentum. And obviously, the approach of the current US administration is much different from the previous one.
Natia, I just want to circle in on what you mentioned a bit earlier, talking about the lack of supplies that Zelensky has been complaining about. Today, we had the Kremlin slam Zelensky's comments, him suggesting that Ukraine should be allowed to have a nuclear deterrent if it's unable to join NATO. Having nuclear weapons in Ukraine's arsenal could really escalate things, couldn't it?
I don't really think that this is something that Ukraine's partners are currently discussing in terms of any sort of, in terms of providing, in terms of it being an element when it comes to providing Ukraine a security guarantees. Obviously, the question of the security guarantees is very serious, but I think NATO allies and as well as, of course, the United States would be very much cautious and reluctant to give Russia a reason to say that NATO is trying to escalate the war. And nuclear weapons have always been part of Russian rhetoric, part of Russian threats. And I don't really think that there is a reason to believe that the West would try to somehow use this as part of its leverage on the negotiation table.